Great. Thanks everyone for coming. So just to introduce myself, my name is Hugh Gainey and I am the course director for LM123. So that is the common entry program, which is biological and chemical sciences. All I want to do just to start with is give a couple of intro slides about the program so that you know what we're talking about in terms of exit streams and the way that the program operates overall. The main focus tonight is on the graduates from the different streams that we have. So we have 4 really excellent graduates that I want to give the vast majority of the time so you can hear their stories, how they got on in the courses, what they're doing afterwards, and kind of give you a flavour for where the programs can lead you afterwards. Okay, so I want to get the nuts and bolts out of the way the first couple of minutes, and then we'll go straight into the different presentations from our speakers afterwards. First thing to say is it's a really open session. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, stop them at the end, ask any questions, or if you want to catch them outside, they're hopefully okay to ask or answer some questions at the end. Okay, so just to give you a bit on LM123, again, hopefully that is clear to most people there. The idea that we have is it's a common entry in first year. Okay, so what you do is you do a common first year, where your entry point is into LM123, and at the end of first year then is when you specialise into what are called the different exit streams. Okay, so again, you should be able to see this more clearly even in terms of the writing that's there. So after that common first year, and I'll give you some of the background on that on the next slide, you transfer into one of the different exit streams, which are Pharmaceutical and Industrial Chemistry, BSc in Industrial Chemistry, we have Environmental Science, and then we have Bioscience. Okay, so we have one graduate from each of those different exit streams here that will talk about the different programs, and that's the degree that you end up with at the end. Okay, so that's the mechanism. You come in, you do kind of a foundation year that covers all of the different science subjects that you would need and the background with some physics and maths and chemistry and biology, a nice mix of kind of an equalizer type year, and then you specialize when you move into the second, third and fourth years of the project. Okay. There is also one additional exit route where in bioscience, which is in the bottom right, there is an exit stream that finishes in biomedical science. So with that, what you do is you do the second and third years in bioscience, and then for the fourth year, you transfer into biomedical science, and the degree at the end then is a degree in biomedical science. Okay, so that's quite far down the road, but just to know that there are those options that exist in terms of the different exit streams that we have. Okay, so with this, just to flag at this stage, so it's a common entry program. The way that it works is there are maximum quotas that apply to each of the exit routes, but what we have seen in the last couple of years in particular is that the first or second option has been gotten by every single student who is coming in. So essentially you choose your preference selection from 1 to 4, and then you're allocated into one of the exit streams based on your academic performance. Okay, so again, that's the real nitty-gritty of it, and we can answer some questions on that if people have any. Just to show you what I mean by this equalizer year, or the first kind of incoming year. So the semesters are just terms. So we have 2 terms in the first year. And what you see, all I want to really highlight here is the variety of subjects that are covered in the entire first year. You can see you have a mixture of things like biology, general chemistry, you have science maths, you have organic chemistry, some of the biology for biosciences. So there's a really nice mix in that first year that brings everyone up to the base level that you will need before you specialize in second, third and fourth year. Okay, so all of the details on the program in general are on the website. If you just Google LM123UL, you get all of the detail. The website has been revamped, so it's really nice, really intuitive. You can get all of this level of detail. But the idea is this makes up for any background that people might be missing. So you may not have done physics at the Leaving Cert level, you may not have done biology and so on. So you can cover the subjects that you don't have a background in and bring yourself up to the level that you will need before you move into the future years. Okay. This is what I really wanted to show then, is it's in the second to fourth year where the students really start to specialize. So what happens is these hopefully will make perfect sense. If you move into the pharmaceutical and industrial chemistry exit stream from second to fourth year, you study a lot of chemistry. So you study all of the different types of chemistry, organic, inorganic, physical, analytical chemistry, and process technology. Even once we bring up the second one, which is biochemistry, you'll see that there's a complete change here in terms of the focus. So this is very much a biochemistry type degree, where in second to fourth year, you're looking at biochemistry, microbiology, biomolecules, proteins and DNA, genetic engineering, and bioprocess engineering. For environmental science, again, it's a very distinct program in that you're looking at waste management, clean technology, water analysis, monitoring, renewable energy, and safety. And then finally, for bioscience, you're looking particularly at plant and human physiology, microbiology, molecular biology, cell biology, genetics, protein, and DNA. Okay, so the main thing, and I know there's a lot of detail in that, the main thing I just want to get across to you is the way that this program works. So you come in via the common route where you do this first year that essentially gives you the idea to identify what you're really interested in. We do always have a certain percentage of the cohort who come in and they say, I love physics, I love biology, and I love chemistry, and I'm not sure which one might be a better fit. But the way the program is structured allows you to make that decision as you move through the program. So when that preference selection is done is roughly halfway through your second semester. So you would have had 3/4 of your entire first year done at that stage. You know which of the subjects are really of interest to you. You might have come in 50-50 biology, chemistry, and then you've shifted that you're now 80% biology and you really love that aspect, or that you've moved towards the chemistry side. Okay, so there's nice flexibility in that, while also if you know in your mind and in your heart that you really want to do chemistry, as I did at the time, you just continue on and do the chemistry from there. Okay, so there's that nice bit of flexibility. So a couple of things to point out. The third year in each of these programs includes what's called co-op. So that's a work placement where you go and work in a relevant industry for 8 months. So that is usually the second semester or the second term in third year. At that stage, you'll have built up a huge amount of knowledge of the background of your program. You'll have really specialized into that area, and you're able to, again, say if you're in chemistry, you can go and work in a pharmaceutical company where you get the hands-on experience that you're then taking forward for when you finish up. So this is a real, gold star that we have here compared to some other programs. Some other universities have short placements where they go and get, a couple of months. You go and work there for 8 months and get fully paid while you're there and have really strong experience once you finish up and can hit the ground running then when you start in your first job. Very often what we find is that students directly go from where they had done co-op and go back there for their first job once they finish college. Okay, so it's a really nice link that you get to do there. And finally as well, just to say that in fourth year, you get to do what's called a final year project. So that is across the entire fourth year, across both semesters, and you basically get a chance to do some research. So you get to work with one of the academics that are in the department, so the lecturers. We all have our own different research areas. So for example, I do materials for batteries. So if someone comes through the chemistry stream and they want to work on that type of project, they would have the opportunity to do that with me across 2 semesters and really get a feel for the whole research ecosystem and how research works. So we have nice little bits and pieces that are dotted through the program that mean that at the end of your BSc, you're basically fit to go straight into industry, or as 2 of our speakers will say today, you could go and do further study in things like a PhD, where they're doing research in UL, I think both in UL, yeah, both in UL, which is another good sign. Okay, so you'll see that the programs are set up very deliberately so that the graduates are immediately suited to going into industry or into research or further studies afterwards. Okay, so that was all I wanted to do in terms of preamble. I don't know if there's any questions at this stage on just the general structure. Does it make sense how the program works overall? I'm more than happy again to chat the real nitty-gritty stuff with people afterwards. That's fine. But as I said, I think we'll just go straight into our first presentation. So this is from Claudia Carey. So Claudia is a graduate from the BSc Environmental Science. Graduated in 2020, and you're now working for Fiber Planning TLI Group. Okay, perfect. So I'll hand over straight away, and we have lots of time for your presentation. So take your time, and if there's any questions afterwards, feel free.
Evening, everybody. As you've been told, I'm a graduate of the Environmental Science course in UL. I graduated in 2020, and here I'm going to just give you a little bit of an insight into my experience as a student and to what you could get out of the course as a student yourselves. First of all, just why I quickly chose to go to UL for my studies. It's a globally recognised university, usually within the top 2% of ratings globally. It has unique support systems in place for their students. So you have our first 7 weeks group, which operate for the first 7 weeks of any semester to support, guide, and just generally help out students where they feel they need it. And there's many learning centres based all around the campus, teaching people in science, maths, and IT if they feel they need the extra bit of help. There's world-class facilities on campus, so you have a state-of-the-art laboratory. So as science students, you spend a lot of your time working in those labs. There is an excellent on-campus library, which has an extensive collection of books and papers that you can make use of. And there's also an excellent living environment on UL. It's a massive green campus that was voted the best in 2019 and 2020. You're also close to the Limerick City Centre, which has a lot of facilities just on your doorstep. So as to why I chose environmental science myself, even before I knew the course was available to me, I knew I had an interest in going into a science course. I studied biology and chemistry, and one of my electives in the Leaving Cert was geography. So I even knew what vein of science that I wanted to pursue. In recent years, obviously, climate change and global warming has been to the fore of many conversations. So I wanted to involve myself in an industry that was growing and potentially be part of the solution myself. When I looked into the course, there was a lot of subjects covered, so I knew that throughout my studies I would be given the tools and the skills in order to further my career post-graduation. Now, the subjects covered in the course, while I was studying in UL, the course was being slightly restructured, so you will be covering the same topics that I did, but not necessarily in the same order. So I've picked out what I feel are the 5 main topics that you'd be touching on throughout your studies. So first of all, you obviously have environmental science itself, where you're taught about the fundamentals of the environment, the reactions and the processes that go on within it, and any issues that affect it. Then you'd be moving on to environmental management. That is where your climate change and global warming awareness would come into play. We look at sustainability and environmental protection that's in place throughout the world. Then you would have clean technologies. Now, these are technologies that are put in place both in an industrial and a consumer side of things, where we want to reduce or mitigate the negative impacts that emissions would have on our world. Then you also have waste management. As the population grows, you have more waste and you have to put different processes into place in order to manage it and potentially use byproducts of reactions to our own benefits. That's how you want to kind of approach that situation. You also have health and safety, which more relates to health and safety within the workplace. So making sure that the workplace is safe for people to carry about their daily lives and to ensure that they're not being exposed to any harmful materials. Now, I've picked out a couple of modules that I partook in and picked out some of the projects that I was a part of. So in conservation ecology, we did a mini research project in which we picked 3 species, whether they be plant or animal, that were endangered or under threat, and we studied them based on their habitat, their behaviour, what's affecting their population decrease, and then any positive legislations and initiatives that were being put forward to help mitigate those negative impacts. These were done as individual projects, but the next 2 were done as group projects. So we have the environmental catalysis, I always get that word wrong, module, and in that we looked at the function of diesel engines in groups. So to know the pollution and how it's caused, you need to understand the function by which it's produced. So we looked at the diesel engine, the system of reactions that take place throughout, and then we made a presentation about the pollution reduction methods that are put in place to help mitigate the negative impacts that are caused by it. Then moving on to clean technology was another module that I took part in. My group was given wind energy as a development where clean technology is seen widely. We looked into how wind turbines are made, the components within them, and then we researched how your wind energy is converted into energy to go through your electrical grid. and then onto the consumer to feed homes and businesses. Then obviously they've touched on your final year project, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on for my own one. Then cooperative education, as they're saying, it's a 8-month, 9 months, but it's a placement that you can either go through the university for interviews or you can set up yourself. Now, I was lucky enough to be in contact with someone who was the managing director of an environmental monitoring service in Limerick. They're called Access Environmental Services. I worked as an environmental technician during my time there, so I would go on site into different industries and monitor for different things such as particulates, emissions, and even something like noise monitoring to make sure that noise exposure wasn't too excessive. I would come back then and write technical reports based on my findings, and we would make sure that the client was within their emissions limits according to different licenses that they had. We'd also liaise with the Environmental Protection Agency and many city and county councils if they went over their limits, and we'd work with them in order to reduce their emissions. Then leading on to my final year project, looks a bit complicated, but I used map making software called QGIS to build different maps to evaluate site suitability for solar farms. So how I approached it was I picked 5 factors. So you have the solar exposure, you have the soil type that the solar farm would be built on, the current designation of the land and what it's currently being used for, the slope and what way it was facing, and the ability for the site to be connected to the electrical grid. Oh, it sounds very fancy and environmental. Then from those maps that I created, I developed a rating system for all of the most wanted aspects and the least wanted aspects. So depending on what soil type you're using, you'd want something a bit more solid rather than a bog, basically. So when I created all of those maps and developed the rating system, I was left with 2 documents at the end of my research. I had a step-by-step guide as to how I created them, so that if anyone wanted to follow the methods and to test my theories, that they could do so. And I had the research project itself. So I picked 4 sites around Ireland and assessed their site suitability. And that was how I approached the aspect of the final year project for the course. And finally, for employment after your graduation, I graduated in 2020, and obviously this was the onset of the pandemic. So unfortunately, my co-op placement were unable to accept me back because obviously there was legislations and there was rules and guidelines, and they said, look, we'd love to have you back, but obviously health and safety. So I did take up a job in retail for a short period of time, and I was interviewing for different companies while I was working there. I was lucky enough to be employed by TLI Group, which is a construction and contracting group. I initially worked in their telecoms department as a junior fibre planner, but I've since been promoted and made permanent, and I am now full-time fibre planning with them. We work on the behalf of National Broadband, and we are putting broadband out to rural Ireland that is more secure and more high speed. So we're basically building the network from the city centres out. So when I was doing my interview, they saw that my experience working with the map making software and my co-op experience from working with on-site crews, along with my general environmental science knowledge, was what made them feel that I would be a good fit for their company. And I've been working with them ever since. Now, it's not the only pathway that you can take out of environmental science. Many of my classmates are in completely different industries. We have one person who's working in wind farm construction. We have a couple of environmental health and safety officers dotted through many multimedia and multidimensional companies. And we did have 1 or 2 people go on and do masters in environmental science. So there are plenty of opportunities coming out of the course that you can branch into. Like even my own work is not directly related to environmental science, but without the course I wouldn't have been qualified or prepared for the course in any way. Now, that is all for me. I do hope I was able to get across what environmental science and the course did for me, and hopefully it's kind of inspired you to have a look a bit more into the course. If you do have any questions, I will be hanging around later, but if you have any now, I'm more than happy to take them.
Thanks really, really fantastic presentation. I think you also did my job at the start as well by showing off the campus and talking about it well. Also to mention that we're joined by the course director for Environmental Science, Peter Davern, as well, who will also be around afterwards for any questions. I don't know, are there any questions from the floor? Are you all too shy to ask a question? Well, this is, a good start for college because they're all too shy to ask questions in lectures in college. With your final year project, so you talked about your 5 different kind of key criteria. Yeah. Could you rank them in terms of importance? Like which was the most important when you're... Well,
I kind of did that on the slide. That was kind of the way in which I kind of ranked them from the college project.
Great. I think you touched on a really nice idea as well, that your classmates, that there's a wide variety of possible job opportunities afterwards. So there's, within each of the programs, there's almost kind of a standard path. So say for environmental sciences to go into environmental monitoring, but you'll always have lots of really good variation then within that group. So there'll be people going into different careers where they use the degree as kind of their stepping stone on to the next career. Super. Again, maybe we'll get lots of questions outside. It was a lovely snapshot of environmental science, so thanks again. Perfect. Okay, so our next speaker then is from the Industrial Biochemistry Exit Stage. So Aoife, if you want to take over from there.
Thanks very much, Hugh. So as Hugh said, my name is Aoife Cotter. I graduated from Industrial Biochemistry not too long ago, just in August 2022. I'm currently an Irish Research Council funded PhD student in the Brunel Institute, which is based at the University of Limerick. Just to give you a bit of background about myself, I'm from Limerick City originally. I went to Laurel Hill Secondary School and I studied biology and chemistry for Leaving Cert. So I guess this is probably really important to all the parents. What kind of job are you going to get when you're done? So one of the reasons why I decided to choose industrial biochemistry is because the course is really highly recognised internationally and also within Ireland. The graduates are really highly sought after. You're also not just limited to working in the biopharmaceutical industry, but also the pharmaceutical industry, medical devices, food or waste processing. I'm just going to cover a little bit about what you'll study if you decide to pick industrial biochemistry. So as Hugh covered earlier, LM123 is a common first year, so I'm going to jump straight into second and third year. So you're going to get a really good foundation in biochemistry, genetic engineering, process technology and analytical science in your second and third year. Then once you move on into your fourth year, you're going to study more specialised modules. A lot of the modules are listed on the left. They have carry-on modules, so it's nice to kind of learn. It's kind of like a stacking effect almost. You learn a small bit, then you're going to learn a bit more. So it's nice that they tie together. Another great reason to study industrial biochemistry is there's a bit of choice. In your final year, you're going to get to pick one module per semester. So I picked current trends in biotechnology and regenerative medicine in my first semester of fourth year, and I picked waste management in my second. The one that I picked in my first semester, current trends in biotechnology and regenerative medicine, actually turned out to be one of my favourite modules of the entire course. There was a lot of guest lectures. There was a new topic every lecture, so it was nice. You kind of got a taste of a few different aspects within that module. Another really great reason why I enjoyed it was because we kind of got to pick the topic that we do our assignments on. So it's nice once you're in your fourth year, you have a bit more autonomy over your learning and you kind of direct your own path and look into something that you're really interested in. So that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed that module. Also, as you said, everybody does a final year project, which could be computational based or lab based. So I did a lab based one, but I'm going to talk about that in a short while. So I did my cooperative placement in Regeneron. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with it, but they're a biopharmaceutical company based in Raheen. So I was an intern in the large scale manufacturing department. So the people that I would have been working with, they're called biotech production specialists. So they're the people that actually manufacture the drug. So I would have been gowned up like people in the picture. So this is called a clean room. So this is a highly regulated environment where those biopharmaceutical medicines are manufactured. So my main role would have been supporting the biotech production specialists, just helping them out where I could. I would have reviewed documents for them. If there's any corrections that needed to be made, I would have contacted the people that need to make those corrections. I also would have collected orders and just different things like that. It was really great hands-on experience. I was very lucky, as you can see. I was there from January to August 2021, so COVID, it was a really big issue at the time, but I was very lucky that I was actually one of the interns that was allowed to go on site. So I was very thankful to Regeneron that they allowed me to have that opportunity. So that brings me on to my final year project. So like you said, everybody does a final year project in their fourth year. And I found that my final year project really summed up everything I'd learned in my second and third year doing industrial biochemistry. So the project, basically, I was producing a type of protein, and to do that, there was bacteria producing it. So the bacteria that I was using are called E. coli. And when bacteria produce a type of protein, the bacteria are referred to as the host expression systems, and they're going to produce this protein for me. So I had to grow up the bacteria in really large quantities. And then once I'd grown up the bacteria, I'd induce them to make the protein that I wanted. Then I needed to purify that protein, so I would have used a few different purification techniques to do that. The first one being cell lysis, and then 2 different types of column chromatography. So I used nickel and size exclusion chromatography to purify the protein that I wanted. Then at the end, I needed to see if I actually had the correct protein that I wanted. So I did SDS page for that to check the purity of it, and then I used Western blot to actually just to make sure that I had the protein that I wanted. So during this time, I worked with a PhD student, and she went on and used the protein that I made in her research. So it was really nice to be able to help her in that way. And that actually leads me on to what I'm doing currently. So I'm currently a PhD student. I'm in my first year of it. Like I said, I'm in the Bernal Institute. I'm actually working within the same group that I did my final year project with. So I'm supervised by Dr. Luis Pedrea, and he's the course director for industrial biochemistry. And what I do day to day, I do some lab work. I do a lot of reading as well. But it's nice, we're kind of split between our desks and we're split between the labs, so it's a nice mix of both. I'm also taking a module because I'm doing a structured PhD, so I have to do some talk credits, and I do lab demonstrating as well. So it's nice, every day is different, and there's a great bunch in UL as well, and a lot of them would have come from fourth year. Emily, my friend, she's doing it as well, so it's really great. There's a really nice bunch of people here, and that's everything that I have.
Okay, thanks. Lovely presentation. And again, you see the difference in the 2 different programs and the different path that you've taken as well into the PhD. Bernie.
Just ask, you worked in Regeneron for your co-op. Would you like to go back in there again, or what's your plan?
I definitely would. Yeah, like as I said, I was in the manufacturing side of things. So the plant in Regeneron in Raheen, it's a manufacturing site. That's its main focus. I guess because I'm doing a PhD now and I'm really involved in the research side, I think I'd like to work in a different department within Regeneron. I know that they have a process science department, and that would be more kind of small scale experimental things. So I think I'd probably prefer to do something like that and not necessarily be in manufacturing. But that was a great thing about doing co-op. Like, you might not necessarily love the department that you're in, but it's great to find out that you don't want to do that. But I definitely would want to go back to Regeneron, but probably just in a different department.
Do you think you'll travel? Do you think they're main office over in Tarrytown?
Yeah, they do. And I remember I heard a few people who would have, while they were working in Regeneron and Raheen, would have spent a few months over there. Like, that would be great. Yeah, I definitely take the opportunity if it's presented to me.
Thanks. Any other queries? Excellent. And again, just to maybe touch on what you mentioned about the idea of doing a PhD, very often people do a PhD and then go back to industry, or it's not that you're in the academic training forever more.
Yeah.
So there's even more options then at the end of
better money, that is
in industry, yeah. Right. Thanks again. Okay, so our next presentation then is from Emily Hill, who is representing Pharmaceutical and Industrial Chemistry.
So, hi everyone, I'm Emily and I graduated from Pharmaceutical and Industrial Chemistry back in August. So I'll just tell you about my experience. So just to start at the start and why I chose to come to UL. So there's a lot of reasons. on the academic side, there's great lab and science facilities. I'd heard about the 8-month industry placement, which was shorter in a lot of the other colleges, and UL has great industry connections. There's Claudia mentioned it earlier, actually, the science learning centres and the sports available where you can just, it's a drop-in service. If you have any questions, there's one-on-one tutors, all free. And then there's lots of other reasons. It's a beautiful campus. There's great sports facilities, clubs to suit everyone. So then why I chose my course. So initially I chose biological and chemical sciences because, like you said earlier, I did biology and chemistry in school, and I just wasn't sure which one I wanted to do in college. And talking to past students at open days was great as well, just to hear about their experience, and it was all very positive. I like the fact as well there's a mixture between the lectures and hands-on labs. So then at the end of first year, I was between biochemistry and pharmaceutical and industrial chemistry, and it was from kind of talking to the lecturers, hearing what we'd be doing in the later years, and I just kind of had an interest in the pharmaceutical side of things. So that's the exit route I went down. So just to talk about some of the modules that we covered, you mentioned them earlier, but some of my favourite ones was analytical chemistry. A lot of the labs, you'd use equipment that they'd use in industry or in the research labs, like gas chromatography and things like that. So that was great. Then on the pharmaceutical side of things, we did modules like pharmaceutical formulation, where you'd learn like how tablets were made or what drugs are suitable for what applications. Then, like the other courses, you get a bit of choice in the later years about what modules you want to do. So the ones in orange, you can choose between them. So I did safety in industry, photochemistry, and chemical nanotechnology. So it's been nice to have a bit of a choice. Like Aoife, I did my placement in Regeneron. So you're there for 8 months, and I was also in manufacturing. So for the first half of it, I was in a clean room, all gowned up like the man there. And it's just great to see the practical side of the course and what the jobs are like. So then for the second half, I was on a desk job. So you just do like the documentation side of things. So it's nice to see the different sides. Then in fourth year, I did a lab-based final year project. So they left every Wednesday of your schedule free so you could work on it. So I was doing it in the Bernal Institute next door, and I was working with one of the PhD students. So I'll just tell you a bit about it. I know I wouldn't probably have understood it when I was in 6th year, but I was working on this drug, indomethacin. It's used for the treatment of arthritis, and we would have looked at it under a microscope first when we got it in, so you can see it at the top there, it's all flat particles. So the first thing I would have done was test what solvents it was soluble in, and it was soluble in methanol, so then we spray dried it. So that's a spray dryer there on the far side. So you dissolve your drug and make up a liquid solution, and then as it's going through the spray dryer, gas breaks it up into smaller droplets, and then they're dried into a powder. And then we would have characterized and examined the powder then. So you can see that the morphology has changed, and you would have just looked at the crystal forms. So it's great to use some of the different types of instrumentation and just learn from the PhD students. So since graduation, I'm a first year PhD student in the O'Reilly Research Group, and I'm working on a similar project to my final year project. So it's focusing on spray drying and looking at ways to improve properties of drugs like their solubility. So while I went down the further education route, a lot of my classmates went into industry. So just to show you where you could work after doing the course. So you can work in companies like Pfizer or Boston Scientific. You can work in a lot of places after it, really. So that's everything. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Emily. Any questions from the floor? Okay, we get one of those that you touched on so many important things, even the way you said that, you know, if you had shown yourself your own final year project when you were in first year, that you wouldn't have been able to make any sense of it.
Yeah.
That's so important, the way that it builds through the years. So you start with that broad foundation in first year and you really start to build in the kind of speciality and specialization as you go along. It's really great to hear. Perfect. Thanks. So we should have good time for chats outside with people once we're finished. So we're on to our last presenter already. So we have Daniela, who is on the Bioscience exit route. So we have our incoming course director sitting there, hiding in the corner maybe, but who will be able to answer any questions outside. So George is just there. Give me a wave. So over to you.
Perfect. So good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome again to the University of Limerick. So my name is Danielle Mazur, and I'll just be taking you through my experience having chosen bioscience as an exit route. So just to begin, a little bit about my background. So I went to Crescent College Comprehensive Secondary School in Limerick, where I chose biology and chemistry as my Leaving Cert subjects. So judging by that, I think you can already tell that I had an interest in science and was interested in pursuing it. So when it came to my CAO, I was actually very lucky in the fact that I knew kind of exactly what I wanted. So my CAO kind of consisted of the same course, just in different fonts and different places. But I ultimately knew that UL would be the best fit for me. So in September of 2018, I accepted a position in LM123, the general entry course. And then at the end of first year, I selected bioscience as my exit route. And then in August just gone of 2022, I finally got to take that really aesthetic graduation picture in a cap and gown, and I got my first class honours degree in bioscience. So moving on to why I actually chose UL as my university. Simply put, it ticked a lot of the boxes for me. It had the course that I was interested in, which was a general entry course, so I knew that I'd get a wide variety of the sciences. I had initially an interest in genetics, but looking back, I'm actually really glad that I went with more of a common entry course, because I got a wide variety of the sciences, and I think I would have hindered myself if I had specialised so early. And I got to see a lot of the other areas of biosciences, which I'm more interested in now. The college also has a great reputation, both academically and also it's got such a friendly atmosphere. I haven't met a previous UL alumni who hasn't had a positive experience in UL, and I know that I've made some great friends for life here. It also has great facilities, which the girls have already mentioned, like a really beautiful modern library, as well as a really nice sports arena, which I would love to say that I visited a lot more than I did, but it's still great to have. Also, the cooperative placement was a major plus for me. It really sets it above the other colleges in Ireland. And it's definitely something that sets your CV above the rest, knowing that you already have an 8-month placement under your belt. And finally, and honestly, out of convenience, I'm from Limerick myself, and I had such a great college on my doorstep, so it really would have been crazy not to consider it. So as I said, I started off in the general entry course, and then at the end of first year, I went into the bioscience exit route. So going into it, I kind of already knew that I wanted to do bioscience because biology was my favorite subject in Leaving Cert. It was also my top subject, and based on the modules that we were going to be covering, I knew that it was something that I would be really interested in. And also it had to do with the life sciences industry that the course would eventually bring me into. It's an ever developing and super exciting field, and so I knew that it was something that I'd love to be a part of, and so that's why I ended up choosing it as my exit route. So moving on to some of the modules that will be covered. So like we mentioned, first year will really be a taster of all the 3 sciences. So biology, chemistry and physics, which is a requirement of any science course. And then you'll also get a taster of the 4 exit routes. Even though I kind of knew already going in what exit route I'd be choosing, it's definitely a great opportunity to have that taster, because you might be swayed between the others, but the modules then might sway you towards one. So then at the start of second year and moving onwards in bioscience, you'll be immersed into the bioscience core modules, which include modules like microbiology, immunology, pharmacology and drug development, genetics and cancer. You'll also have an opportunity to study computer sciences throughout the course, which is great to upskill in Excel and PowerPoint, but I'm sure you're all very much familiar with it now, seeing as we went kind of more digital in the recent years. But it's still great to have those skills, especially when it comes to your FYP in 4th year. Similar to the other courses, we also have electives, but ours are in second year. So it's really an opportunity to tailor the semester to your liking. So there were electives within our field. So there was some extra microbiology ones, food biotechnology ones, but then we also got an opportunity to dip out of science and take a business module or else some language studies as well. So it's really a great experience to be able to tailor the semester to your liking. So moving on to the cooperative placement, which was really one of the main aspects of what drew me to UL. So I did my placement in an agricultural analytics company, FBA Laboratories in Cappoquin, County Waterford. So I was hired as an assistant laboratory technician, and I was working in the diagnostics department. So for anyone familiar with cattle, if you know the little identification tags that they have on the ears, the little yellow ones, when you punch in that tag, you take a little sample and those are sent off to the labs. So I was involved in testing those cow ear nut samples for a virus known as BVD, and we were also involved in testing milk for its quality. So what I really enjoyed about my placement was that it was a great opportunity to be exposed to different careers in our field. So even if lab work isn't for you, there are plenty of other work opportunities available, and this is a great time for you to be exposed to them. I was also able to learn some valuable work skills that were applicable to any profession, not just science, but then as well specific to my field. So it was great to put the theory of the lectures into practice and to actually carry out the procedures. And then moving on to my final project, which is really one of the highlights of my course. I won't go into too much detail about it because it might be a bit confusing, but it was basically in the area of neuroscience with a focus on Parkinson's disease, and it was supervised by Dr. George Barretto. So it was really a great opportunity, and it was a real first taste of what a career in research could possibly look like. We got some great experience in academic writing, in writing our reports, and also in experimental design. And I also got to learn some new laboratory techniques and apply those to my report. And the real icing on the cake was when on graduation, I actually won a gold medal for the first place project in my course group. So it was really an icing on the cake after a fantastic 4 years in the course. So that brings us to where am I now, which is still here, but virtually studying this time. So I'm in a full-time biomolecular science master's course, which I won't go into too much detail about because this isn't why you're here. But upon completion of it, I hope to pursue a career in industry, which doesn't seem any way daunting, as a quick LinkedIn search will tell you that a lot of my classmates are actually in full-time positions in industry, some of which you can see here on the right, or went down the graduate program route, which is when you, after you graduate, a company might take you for a year and employ you. So a lot of them are in industry, but some have also gone into further studies, so are doing masters or PhDs, either in UL or elsewhere. Some are also doing graduate medicine exams, because a lot of people use this course as a kind of a backdoor entrance into graduate entry medicine. So it's great to know that that's also an option for you if you were considering it. And so that brings me to the end. So thank you so much for listening, and I wish you all the best of luck in your studies.
So again, the same question to the audience. Bernie, are you?
I was going to ask, were there many students in your class not from them? No.
There was a good range of us from kind of all over Ireland, to be honest, and that was great as well for placement, that they were able to go anywhere as well. It wasn't just Limerick. Like I myself ended up in Waterford, which was daunting initially, but it was a really great opportunity in the end.
I think a huge portion of the co-op experience is to just work in the real world. It's fine, it's your applied skills that you've learned in the lectures, but it is being a functional employee within a company for 8 months. That kind of experience is hugely beneficial.
Definitely.
So is there any final questions for them yet? Great, thanks man. So maybe I'll just say a couple of kind of summing up words from my side in terms of what I would like to get across as the most important things. You've seen the quality of the graduates that these different exit streams can produce. These are only a selection of our graduates, and quite soon after graduation. You've already seen what they can do in a short period of time. If we came back in 10 years, I mean, it's really sky's the limit type situation here. So to break cover slightly, I graduated from industrial chemistry myself. So I graduated in 2008. My classmates are all over the world. They're, leading labs that have multiple people. They're across different sectors. There's phenomenal employment opportunities across the various programs that are there. The question I very often get from people is, which of the exit streams should I choose to get me the best job at the end? What I would always say in that is the employability is so high across all of the programs that you go with what you're interested in. So if you really like the chemistry route, pick chemistry. Don't think, oh, I might get better jobs here. The employment is just fantastic across the board. So I don't know, is there any other questions? Peter, do you want to say a couple of words? No, well, I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe it's better to just have a chat with people outside.
No, but I suppose I always think of what Seamus McMonaghan used to say. I remember it now about jobs and that, and what course to do. And he used to say this to leaving certificate students. He'd say 3 things. He'd be quite, you remember, he'd be quite stern enough in his way.
No.
Yeah, chemist, yeah, but he was general advice.
Yeah, no.
He'd be,
Life advice. Yeah.
life, exactly, life advice. He said, he's stern enough saying it, he'd say, do you like it? Are you any good at it? And can you make a living from it? And those are the 3 things. And that's the way he said it.
Yeah.
So,
senior lecturer here.
yeah. And as Stu said, pick something you like.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than doing a job you don't like. Yeah. So pick subject you like. I think parents here probably will be pushing you and pulling you to do all sorts of courses. Yeah. But they don't have to work in those areas. You have to work in those areas. Why didn't Frankie never change?
You'll have to answer to the parents in a minute. Yeah. You'll have to answer to the parents.
Well, I no problem answering.
Exactly.
But no, but the point is, I suppose, you're going to, it's like buying a car. Buying this car, you're going to use it for the next 4 years and beyond. Try and buy one you like, which you're comfortable driving. Yeah? And as Hugh says, you're going to get good employment prospects no matter what, honestly, across the board. Yeah.
And it's the whole experience. It's the lifelong learning thing that you're starting by kicking this off. It's the lifelong friends. It's the whole campus experience. So we'll maybe thank the speakers again, the graduates. Yeah, there's tea and coffee outside, and we'll mingle and chat to anyone who has any questions you might be brave enough to ask outside. So thanks all for coming.